prized,
skinny,
attractive by Hollywood standards,
princessy,
weak.
Not particularly diverse.
A lot of the time they seem to have an attraction to someone or they are attractive.
Most of their objectives are romantically related.
Very typical.
Very far and in between.
Objectified.
Cliched.
Majority.
Handsome.
dashing,
Dominant.
hero,
Strong.
Rugged.
Righteous.
star.
More vocal.
Dominant.
Powerful.
Age seems to be less of a limiting factor.
I would say both are represented fairly equally. I think the problem is that the representation is unfair.
Both of them are represented, but I feel like men are more.
Fortunately, men. Definitely men.
I think men are always more represented in Hollywood films.
Men.
Sexism means discrimination based on someone's gender.
Sexism to me would represent more positive portrayal in the media of men in comparison to women.
People being put down about their gender.
Discrimination based on gender and built on stereotypes.
It's the discrimination of a person based on their gender.
Sexism to me is an institutional creation that imposes gender roles upon men and women both in a very immediate way, but also an institutionalized way that's not always obvious.
It's really about control.
You have very strong actresses like Bette Davis or Joan Crawford from the 30s and 40s when women were, in a sense, more able to call the shots in what they would do in film.
Women in the media from, like, say, 1900s to now had a little bit more powerful roles, but nowadays it's very, very narrow, limited categories of women that can be portrayed.
In the 50s and 40s, right after World War II, sexism in media was a lot more about men bringing home the bacon and women being there and cleaning and being something to come home to.
That was when male audiences really began accepting the idea of a very strong woman lead in the movies. There have been others since then, but still not enough.
I think over the course of time, it's become a lot more openly sexual.
Sexism in recent years is worse than it used to be.
The roles, although socially are less rigid than they used to be in the 40s, are still very subtly sexist in many, many ways.
Most of what I've seen is usually men having these powerful, strong roles that connects to the plot line and it pushes the plot line along, while women are just branches off of that tree.
They always have to have some relationship to a man.
Women don't get as many blockbuster starring roles as men do.
For some reason, writers or directors find it easier to relate towards men.
Men between their upper teens and maybe early 30s is still the target audience of Hollywood. They want to see either themselves or their ideal selves on the screen, and at the same time, most of the women in the movies are going to be their dream.
In films, the women always have to have beautiful makeup, and it seems like they have to have that or they're not pretty.
Women in Hollywood tend to get put up on a shelf once they reach a certain age. Men of all ages are leading men, and often romantically matched with women of younger ages typically, i.e. someone like George Clooney could be his age, but he's always going to be matched with somebody who's 25, whether he's 35, 45, 55, 65. And I think that's pretty typical.
Hollywood is still about men, disproportionately.
There are so many examples of it, it's almost impossible to list them all.
If you were to watch a half an hour of regular TV, you would see it.
Even though the roles are a little more diverse, there's still the same kind of emphasis that everything is done from a man's point of view.
Women's bodies are used to sell magazine covers, cheeseburgers, cars, beer, probably any product. They're treated as objects.
Girls grow up with shows about princesses and people protecting them and defending them. I think that develops an attitude of, I can just be really cute and pretty and I'll be able to do what I want. And that's how women are supposed to get things done. And that just perpetuates sexism.
It shows an unhealthy image for girls to grow up to and aspire to when there's a lot more than just those things that are portrayed in current media.
Hollywood gives us those images, but we actually are ultimately giving Hollywood the go-ahead to give us those images.
The sexualization of women and girls at younger and younger ages feels like a really recent phenomenon that makes me pretty upset. I see it all the time in the kinds of clothes that are marketed to girls, the kinds of activities, the very specific gendered toys that are marketed to kids. It's not good for boys or girls to have everything be so segregated. I do feel like there's a little bit of a box that men are put into also, which I think is just as damaging.
There is a lot of sexism against guys and a lot of pressures put on our young men that are really negative and harmful to their self-esteem. I think that because men are stereotyped as having to be strong and masculine in Hollywood films, that pours over into the men in our normal everyday society. And the same thing goes for women, because women are portrayed as weaker or as romantic objects in Hollywood, that pours over into our daily society.
Hollywood is basically a reflection of what goes on in real life.
The ideas that are being discussed through the lens of media sexism distort the actual roles of men and women, and they change the way that men and women relate to each other.
With sexualization being so much more prominent than I think it used to be, I think it's very easy for girls and women to feel that their only worth is what they look like and what someone else thinks they look like, and then for boys and men to feel like women's only worth is as an object to admire.
People thinking that their body or their traits or the things about them need to be the same as the characters.
It makes it harder for people to feel accepting of themselves for being slightly different than what media and society may be telling them to do.
It is hurtful.
It's painful to watch its effect upon young females and young males especially.
I feel like there is a very strong grassroots movement right now with people really recognizing all of this happening and speaking up about it.
A lot of the best progress you make is having women have greater roles behind the cameras. That's where a lot of the change is going to have to come from those who are really holding the power and controlling the money.
Definitely having more women within the industry, I think, might help, as well as just having messages out to kids saying, like, you can make your own normal, and that normal should symbolize equality within all genders and sexes.
It's a combination of teaching our kids as they're younger and educating people around us with what we believe in and getting more women into leadership roles in all the different industries.
I think it starts up top. I think it starts with writing stories that are about people breaking the mold and about that being okay to break the mold. And then directors realizing that this could also sell too.
You can actually make a movie that stars primarily women, and many people want to see it.
The big studios have to recognize that their stories are equally interesting to men's stories, and not just to other women, but also to men.
Having more female protagonists.
We, the viewing public, have to drive this. We have to evolve and not just necessarily buy into what Hollywood feels that we all want to see. And we have to speak with our money by not going to see movies we find objectionable or don't portray everyone in a positive manner. It starts with us, the consumers. We need to be the initiating force.